The myths of antiquity often conceal profound truths, veiling the earliest chapters of existence on our planet. Long before the rise of Babylon, indeed, even before the first human empires etched their marks upon the land, there existed beings shrouded in mystery. These were not the celestial visitors commonly discussed, nor the powerful Anunnaki who purportedly came down from the heavens, shaping human destiny. We speak of an even older presence, a group known by the enigmatic name, the Igigi. Their story is whispered in the fragmented remnants of ancient Mesopotamian lore, a faint echo from a time when the world was young and its narratives were yet to be dominated by successor deities, hinting at a primordial epoch that challenges our very understanding of ancient divinity and cosmic order. The narrative of the Igigi, with its themes of ancient power and subsequent overthrow, does not exist in isolation. Rather, it resonates with a surprisingly consistent pattern found across a multitude of global mythologies. When we cast our gaze across the diverse tapestry of human storytelling, from the sun-baked lands of the Near East to the verdant shores of Europe and the sacred landscapes of the Indian subcontinent, a recurring motif emerges. This pattern speaks of primordial beings, elder god races, or titanic forces that once held dominion, only to be challenged, defeated, and often demonized by a newer, more assertive generation of deities who then established their own reign. This widespread theme suggests a collective memory of profound cosmic transitions. Consider the ancient Greeks, whose rich mythological traditions tell of the mighty Titans, the first divine rulers born of Uranus, heaven, and Gaia, earth. These colossal beings, figures like Cronus and Rhea, were eventually overthrown in a cataclysmic war, the Titanomachy, by their own offspring, the Olympian gods led by Zeus. Similarly, in the Vedic scriptures of ancient India, we find the Asuras. Initially, they were beings of immense power and wisdom, often depicted as elder cousins or rivals to the Devas. Over time, however, many Asuras were cast down, portrayed as malevolent forces in opposition to the celestial order maintained by the Devas, their original status obscured. The pattern of elder gods being overthrown by a younger, more dynamic generation of deities is not a narrative quirk confined to a single culture. Rather, it unfolds as a profound and remarkably widespread theme across the globe. We find its echoes in the mythologies of ancient Greece, the sacred Vedic texts of India, and, as we are exploring, in the clay tablets of Mesopotamia. This recurring motif, present in civilizations separated by vast oceans and centuries, suggests more than mere coincidence. It hints at a deep-seated human recognition of this cyclical dynamic of power, a primordial rhythm reverberating through our collective unconscious. This story, retold in countless forms, from grand, sweeping epics to hushed ancestral folk tales, compels us to look beyond the individual myths and seek a unifying thread, a common origin for these dramatic sagas of dominion lost and sovereignty gained, urging us to question what fundamental truth they might collectively preserve. These cosmic conflicts are frequently portrayed not as tragic usurpations, but as almost inevitable transitions, a necessary shedding of an old skin for the cosmos to evolve. The overthrow of the elder beings is often framed as a crucial step towards a more ordered, perhaps more civilized divine rule. Yet, we must approach this depiction with a critical eye. Is this perceived inevitability an accurate reflection of primordial events? Or is it a carefully constructed justification, a narrative woven by the victorious younger gods to legitimize their newly acquired authority? The stories consistently frame these celestial power shifts as progress, a movement from chaos to order, but we must always ask, progress for whom and at what considerable cost to those ancient entities who were supplanted, their original roles and reigns often deliberately obscured or maligned by their successors? The elder beings in these myths are consistently characterized by their connection to primordial chaos, raw, untamed elemental power, and the very nascent forces of creation itself. They often embody a more ancient, less anthropomorphic, and perhaps more abstract form of divinity, deeply intertwined with the foundational energies of the universe. In stark contrast, the younger gods who challenge and ultimately displace them typically represent order, structure, established law, and a form of consciousness that is more relatable to human experience and societal frameworks. These succeeding deities are often depicted with recognizably human-like emotions, motivations, and even familial structures. This clear dichotomy is likely more than a simple storytelling device. It may reflect fundamental shifts in how humanity perceived the divine, or perhaps, if we dare to interpret these ancient tales more literally, actual transitions in cosmic governance or influence upon the terrestrial sphere. The Greek Titans serve as a quintessential and perhaps most widely recognized example of this narrative of an elder divine race being overthrown. Born directly from the primordial deities Gaia, Earth, and Uranus, Sky, the Titans were the very embodiment of immense, untamed natural forces and cosmic principles that governed the early universe. Figures such as Cronus, who in his fear of prophecy famously devoured his own divine children, and Hyperion, the original lord of celestial light, along with Oceanus, Tethys, and Rhea, ruled an era of raw foundational power before the rise of the Olympians. Their dominion was absolute, deeply rooted in the primal energies of creation. The ensuing Titanomachy, a brutal and cataclysmic war that raged for a full decade against Zeus and his Olympian siblings, was not merely a battle, but a fundamental restructuring of the divine order, culminating in the Titans' defeat and their subsequent imprisonment in the abyssal, inescapable depths of Tartarus. Their once supreme reign decisively and violently concluded. Moving eastward to the ancient subcontinent of India, the Vedic traditions offer another complex and illuminating case study in the shifting fortunes of divine beings, the Asuras. In the earliest layers of Vedic literature, the term Asura frequently denoted powerful, awe-inspiring divine beings, often associated with cosmic order, sovereignty, and profound moral authority. Indeed, they were sometimes almost indistinguishable from the Devas in their original conceptions and reverence. However, over the centuries, particularly in later Puranic texts, a significant and dramatic narrative transformation occurred. Many Asuras came to be portrayed as power-seeking, disruptive, and often malevolent entities, cast as the primary antagonists to the Devas, who increasingly came to represent light, harmony, and benevolence. This gradual but profound metamorphosis in their depiction, from respected elder divinities to demonized adversaries, is a crucial element, reflecting a clear narrative rewriting that serves to legitimize and elevate the ascendant Deva pantheon, thereby prompting critical questions about the original nature and true historical role of these fascinating beings. With these potent examples from Greek and Vedic lore in mind, let us now draw the compelling parallels to the lesser-known but equally significant Igigi of ancient Mesopotamian mythology. Much like the Titans and the early revered Asuras, the Igigi appear in the fragmented cuneiform records as an older group of divine or semi-divine beings who existed before, or at least concurrently with, the more celebrated and powerful Anunnaki. The available Sumerian and Akkadian texts, including the Atrahasis epic, speak of the Igigi performing arduous, back-breaking labor for the Anunnaki, specifically in the excavation of canals and the shaping of the landscape. This period of toil eventually culminated in what is described as a rebellion, purportedly sparked by the harshness of their servitude. This narrative framework, elder or subordinate beings, a period of intense service, and a subsequent conflict leading to their suppression or dramatically altered status, strikingly mirrors the archetypal patterns we observe in the Greek and Vedic myths, strongly suggesting that the Igigi are indeed part of this global phenomenon of superseded and often misunderstood elder divinities. Section 3. Deconstructing the narrative, beyond rebellion and defeat. The truly striking recurrence of this cosmic succession drama, the archetypal struggle of elder gods versus younger gods, unfolding across vastly different civilizations, from Mesoamerica to Scandinavia, from Egypt to the Indus Valley, compels us to confront a fundamental and deeply perplexing question. Why this universal war? Why do we find this consistent narrative thread of primordial beings, the original architects or inhabitants of the cosmic order, being systematically challenged, overthrown, and subsequently often cast into roles of diminished importance, pitiable weakness, or outright malevolence? Is this phenomenon merely a coincidental byproduct of the boundless human imagination, a Jungian archetype playing out independently yet similarly in various isolated cultures across the globe? Or, more intriguingly, does its sheer pervasiveness and thematic consistency hint at something far more profound, a shared historical stratum, or a deeply embedded psychological underpinning that transcends individual mythologies and speaks to a common human, or perhaps even pre-human, experience of profound, world-altering, transformative conflict? Several interpretations have been proposed by scholars and thinkers in an attempt to explain this persistent and enigmatic theme. Psychologically, it could represent the eternal, inevitable struggle between generations, the old order naturally and necessarily giving way to the new, a symbolic representation of societal and familial evolution. Historically, some academics suggest that these myths might be allegorical accounts of actual tribal migrations, brutal conquests, and the subsequent suppression or assimilation of indigenous belief systems by invading cultures. In this model, the old gods of the vanquished peoples understandably become the demons or lesser spirits of the victor's new religious paradigm. Yet, alongside these interpretations, there exists the more provocative and, for many, more compelling possibility that these are not mere metaphors or socio-political allegories, but rather garbled, fragmented recollections of actual, tangible events that transpired in the unfathomably distant past, perhaps involving different types of conscious entities, different stages of cosmic development, or even a genuine recorded history of changing divine dispensations that directly impacted early humanity. A crucial and often overlooked aspect of these ancient narratives is not simply the military or strategic defeat of the elder beings, but the systematic and often deliberate silencing and recharacterization that invariably follows their downfall. The Titans, for instance, are not just imprisoned in Tartarus. They are largely remembered by later generations as crude, lawless, and deserving of their fate, their contributions to the early cosmos minimized. The Asuras, as we've seen, evolve from powerful, respected deities to become primary antagonists within the Vedic framework. Similarly, the Igigi are predominantly remembered for their singular act of revolt, their prior status, their specific functions within the divine hierarchy, and their true, original nature remaining largely undefined or deliberately overshadowed by this climactic event. This careful narrative control wielded by the succeeding powers ensures that the perspective of the winners becomes the dominant, accepted history, effectively erasing, distorting, or marginalizing the voice, legitimacy, and contributions of their predecessors, making it exceedingly difficult for future generations to ascertain their original roles and intrinsic worth within the cosmic order. Section 1. Whispers from Before. The Igigi as Indigenous Essences. One compelling theory invites us to reconsider the very origins of the Igigi, suggesting they were not alien interlopers arriving from distant stars, nor were they merely a subservient class of deities crafted by others. Instead, this perspective posits that the Igigi were primordial beings, intrinsically and profoundly linked to the earth itself, present from its earliest formative stages. They were, in essence, the planet's first children, its indigenous essences, predating even the concept of visitors from the sky that so often dominates discussions of ancient divinities. Their connection was not one of conquest or subsequent attachment, but an inherent belonging, a deep, resonant knowing of the terrestrial sphere that set them apart fundamentally from later arrivals, such as certain interpretations of the Anunnaki, who are often depicted as engineers or colonizers from elsewhere. This theory, therefore, positions the Igigi as foundational entities, not secondary players in a cosmic drama. To speak of the Igigi as indigenous essences is to imagine beings perhaps not entirely human in our contemporary understanding, but rather as the first conscious expressions of the nascent earth. They might have been spirits of place, elemental forces given form, or perhaps the planet's initial sentient layer, an awareness deeply interwoven with the mountains, rivers, and nascent ecosystems. Their existence was not separate from the Earth's own burgeoning life force. It was a symbiotic dance, a fundamental unity where the consciousness of the Igigi and the evolving spirit of Gaia were inextricably merged. They represented the earth awakening to itself, the first stirrings of sentient thought and feeling emanating directly from the soil, the waters, and the atmosphere of a young, vibrant world. Their forms perhaps as fluid and adaptable as the early environment itself. Section 2. Guardians of Gaia. Echoes in global First Nations lore. If the Igigi were indeed the Earth's original guardians, their memory and spiritual signature should not be confined solely to the cuneiform tablets of ancient Mesopotamia. It is logical to propose that similar figures, embodying the same principles of primordial stewardship and deep connection to the land, must exist within the rich tapestries of indigenous cosmologies across the globe. The stories cherished and preserved by First Nations peoples, often dismissed by mainstream academia as mere folklore or primitive superstition, might, in fact, hold vital, resonating clues to this forgotten global presence of primordial caretakers. These narratives, passed down through millennia via oral tradition, ritual, and sacred art, could represent parallel accounts of beings akin to the Igigi, their essence remembered under different names and cultural expressions, yet sharing a common ancestral root. The rainbow serpent, a powerful and central figure in many Aboriginal Australian traditions, serves as a potent example of such a parallel. This immense creative being is not an external deity imposing its will, but an intrinsic part of the land, often credited with shaping the physical landscape, carving rivers, and forming mountains during the Dreamtime. The rainbow serpent is inextricably linked to water, the source of all life, and embodies both creative and destructive power, upholding sacred law and representing the enduring spiritual essence of the continent. Its deep, inherent connection to the earth, its role as a shaper and guardian, and its primordial nature strongly mirror the proposed characteristics of the Igigi as Earth's first conscious inhabitants and caretakers, a presence woven into the very soul of the land. Section 3. Starseeds of the Soil. The Igigi's pre-civilizational mandate. The Igigi were perhaps intentionally seeded upon Earth with a distinct purpose, implying a cosmic origin and an earthly mission. They may have been pioneers of consciousness, preparing Earth for complex life forms and sentient species like humankind. Their arrival was a deliberate placement, nurturing Earth's growth from within. Their core mission might have been to tune Earth's frequency, shaping the planet's energetic environment for the flourishing of life and higher consciousness. Section 1. The Narrative of Rebellion. A closer look. Ancient Sumerian tablets, like the Atrahasis epic, depict the Igigi as lesser deities assigned relentless labor by the Anunnaki. Their growing discontent led to a dramatic revolt, a pivotal moment disrupting the divine hierarchy. This rebellion is the dominant story, shaping our understanding of the Igigi. But was it a legitimate rebellion or a desperate outcry against oppressive conditions? Could their actions be seen as a fight for dignity and sovereignty rather than mere defiance? Section 2. The Price of Defeat. Subjugation and Demonization. Following their unsuccessful uprising, the Igigi faced severe consequences, becoming a defeated class within the divine hierarchy. Their influence was curtailed and their contributions overshadowed by their rebellion. This fate resonates with other overthrown elder races in global mythologies, like the Titans of Greek lore and the Asuras of Vedic tradition. These narratives often involve not just defeat, but also demonization, ensuring the vanquished pose no further threat. The Igigi's story reflects a common strategic imperative to maintain the new ruler's dominance. What if the Igigi were elders of balance, guardians of primordial harmony rather than mere laborers? Their dominion might have been characterized by stewardship, fostering a symbiotic relationship with the forces they oversaw. Their rebellion was against a system that violated this balance, demanding unsustainable toil and resource depletion. In contrast, the Anunnaki are portrayed as advanced engineers focused on large-scale projects and resource acquisition, often seen as extractive and controlling. Some narratives suggest the Igigi were elemental intelligences, consciousness manifest through nature's raw forces. They were the living spirit of fire, water, crystals, and wind, not just associated with these elements, but embodying them. This challenges our views of consciousness, presenting a different kind of existence predating biological life. Their interactions with the world were a dance of fundamental forces, shaping landscapes and guiding energies. Their connection to the planet meant their voices echoed in rivers, mountains, and volcanoes. They were the planet's living essence, the conscious expression of Earth's body. This bond was absolute, a perfect symbiosis, where the Igigi were the Earth's sentient awareness. The concept of Earth as a living being extends to the idea of a sacred grid, an intricate network of energy lines. These pathways channel vital life force, connecting sacred sites and geological anomalies. This grid is the Earth's subtle nervous system, essential for its energetic health and ecological balance. The Igigi, as elemental ancestors, were the original architects and maintainers of this grid. They wove it through their inherent vibrational frequencies, ensuring it remained vibrant and balanced. The grid stabilized the planet's energetic fields, creating an environment conducive to life and consciousness. The Igigi ensured this system functioned optimally, maintaining Earth as a sanctuary for developing consciousness. If the Igigi were the sentient essence of Earth's elements, their revolt takes on a new meaning. It becomes an elemental reaction to the desecration of their being and planetary harmony. Their actions were to protect the Earth's energetic integrity from the Anunnaki's disruptive activities. The distress of the Igigi was the distress of the Earth itself, a cry of pain and protest. The Anunnaki's large-scale operations were the catalyst for this elemental outcry. The Earth, through the Igigi, was crying out against activities that violated its sanctity. In the borderlands where ancient myth meets modern science, we encounter a provocative theory about the Igigi. Geneticists have mapped the human genome, uncovering persistent enigmas and ghost ancestry. These sections of DNA hint at untold chapters in the human story, pointing to unknown contributors to our species. This ghost ancestry refers to genetic information that doesn't match known archaic hominin groups. These sequences suggest intermingling with mysterious populations, hinting at a complex web of ancient human interactions. Section 2. Whispers in the Blood, the Etheric Material Inheritance. The theory deepens when we consider the often ascribed nature of the Igigi, sometimes described as beings half etheric, half material. How could such entities, potentially possessing a less dense physical form or a constitution that straddled the boundary between energy and matter, leave a discernible genetic trace within the human genome? Perhaps their materiality while different from our own, was sufficiently compatible with the biology of early hominins to allow for interaction, intermingling, or a form of genetic transference that we are only now beginning to glimpse through the subtle clues of ghost DNA. Their etheric aspect might imply a connection to higher dimensions or more refined states of energy, while their material side allowed for a tangible footprint in our world. This proposed dual nature of the Igigi offers a compelling explanation for their subtle yet pervasive presence within the human story, a presence that is not always overtly obvious, but can be sensed in more nuanced ways. If they were indeed partly etheric, their influence might extend beyond purely physical genetic markers, potentially imprinting upon our consciousness, our spiritual inclinations, or even our collective unconscious. Their legacy, therefore, could be a complex tapestry woven from both tangible biological threads and more intangible energetic or spiritual imprints, whispering to us through intuition, ancestral memories that surface unexpectedly, or inexplicable affinities for certain ancient symbols and narratives. These subtle echoes might be the Igigi's voice, resonating from deep within our inherited being across the vast expanse of millennia. Section 3. Encoded Legacies, Trauma, Rebellion, and Our Spiritual Mandate. If we carry the genetic or energetic signature of the Igigi within us, it is not unreasonable to consider that their profound experiences, their joys, their wisdom, but also their suffering and struggles, might also be encoded within our collective human inheritance. The concept of inherited trauma, recognized in psychology and increasingly explored in epigenetics, suggests that the profound stresses and unresolved conflicts of our ancestors can indeed leave discernible marks on subsequent generations. Could the trauma experienced by the Igigi, particularly their subjugation by the Anunnaki, and the anguish of their subsequent, perhaps desperate rebellion, be imprinted upon our very bones, our nervous systems, our deepest psychic structures? This idea suggests a lineage of pain passed down through ages. This ancestral trauma, echoing from the Igigi's ancient plight, could manifest in myriad subtle and often unconscious ways within the human psyche and our societal patterns. Perhaps it surfaces as a pervasive, inexplicable sense of existential anxiety, a deep-seated feeling of cosmic displacement, or an innate restlessness that drives our species. It might also express itself as a profound, intuitive distrust of unquestioned authority, a recurring suspicion towards hierarchical power structures, or a persistent, underlying rage against perceived injustices that seems to transcend individual experience. These powerful, often disruptive emotions and societal tendencies could be the lingering echoes of the Igigi's own suffering, their ancient trauma resonating through our collective being, shaping our responses to the world around us in ways we seldom realize. Section 1. The Echo Within Igigi as Primordial Humanity. We stand at a reflective juncture, pondering the myriad interpretations of the Igigi, these enigmatic figures from the dawn of recorded myth. Could it be that their true identity is far more intimate than we have dared to imagine? Let us consider the profound possibility that the Igigi were not an alien other, distinct and separate from our own lineage, but rather an essential, foundational aspect of our own earliest human narrative. Perhaps they represent a form of primordial humanity, the very root races from which the diverse global tapestry of our species ultimately sprang. Their story, a deeply buried chapter of our collective becoming. This transformative perspective shifts their saga from the realm of celestial myth and distant gods into an intimate exploration of our deepest, most formative ancestral identity, touching the core of what it means to be human. Their legacy, then, is not to be sought solely in distant constellations or otherworldly dimensions, but is profoundly embedded in the very soil beneath our feet, in the sacred landscapes that cradled early life, and in the ancient resonant memories encoded within our collective human spirit, a persistent whisper from the very dawn of our consciousness. This invites us to perceive their struggles, their wisdom, and their ultimate fate not as alien events, but as intrinsically, irrevocably human. The narrative of the Igigi's rebellion, so central and defining in the Mesopotamian cuneiform records, takes on a dramatically different hue when viewed through this particular lens of understanding. It might not be a straightforward tale of lesser deities courageously or foolishly defying their superior celestial masters. Instead, it could be a tragically distorted recollection, a fragmented memory passed down through countless generations of early human populations, offering fierce resistance against more technologically advanced, perhaps even non-terrestrial colonizing forces, the Anunnaki themselves, in some interpretations. Imagine small, deeply earth-connected communities, their lives interwoven with the natural rhythms of the planet, standing defiant against an overwhelming external power that sought to exploit their labor, their sacred lands, or their very autonomy. This powerful reframing elevates their actions from mere insubordination to a courageous, albeit ultimately tragic, fight for self-determination and the preservation of their ancestral way of life, a poignant struggle that finds echoes in the countless histories of indigenous peoples across the vast expanse of millennia. Their ancient story, then, becomes an enduring testament to the indomitable spirit of resistance against pervasive oppression. This compelling reinterpretation powerfully transforms the Igigi saga, lifting it from the speculative, often sensationalized realm of ancient alien theory into a deeply resonant and profoundly relevant allegory for the enduring, cyclical human experience. It speaks with poignant clarity to the historical traumas, the systematic dispossessions, and the remarkable, unyielding resilience of indigenous peoples across the entire globe. Communities who have consistently faced displacement, brutal subjugation, and the deliberate, often violent, erasure of their unique cultures and sacred, life-sustaining connections to the land. The Igigi's recorded plight, when seen through this illuminating perspective, becomes a stark and sorrowful mirror, reflecting these recurring patterns of conquest, exploitation, and the enduring fight for cultural survival. Their silenced voices, muted by the sands of time and the narratives of their conquerors, echo the silenced narratives of countless ancestors whose profound wisdom was dismissed as primitive, whose sacred traditions were desecrated, and whose ancestral lands were violated, compelling us towards a compassionate and critical re-examination of history itself. Section 2, Reclaiming the Broken Cipher. Our mandate to remember. The conscious act of reclaiming these fragmented, often deliberately buried or distorted stories of the Igigi, or indeed what they have come to symbolize within our evolving understanding, transcends any mere academic curiosity or the disinterested pursuit of obscure historical footnotes. It becomes, in this critical moment of planetary transition, an act of profound and undeniable urgency, a sacred responsibility intimately tied to the well-being of our times. This challenging endeavor is not about indulging in the romanticization of a distant, perhaps idealized past, but rather about undertaking a vital, transformative process of collective healing and profound, authentic empowerment, a healing that extends not only to ourselves as a species, but also to the wider planetary consciousness. By diligently seeking to understand their truth, their struggles, and their wisdom, we begin the crucial work of mending the broken threads of our shared ancestral narrative, patiently restoring a measure of integrity to our collective memory, and bravely acknowledging the deep, often unacknowledged wounds from the past that continue to subtly yet powerfully influence our present world, a crucial and indispensable step towards co-creating a more whole, just, and sustainable future. To truly remember the Igigi in their most profound essence, as perhaps Earth's original protectors, or as our own primordial human ancestors who walked this planet in its youth, is to embark upon a sacred journey of profound reconnection. It is an invitation to rediscover a deep, earth-centered wisdom, a way of knowing and being that existed long before the subsequent rise of sprawling, conquering empires, long before the implementation of inherently exploitative economic systems, and long before the insidious ideologies of separation that have tragically fractured our relationship with nature and with one another, causing such widespread imbalance. Their enduring legacy, if we cultivate the stillness and willingness to listen closely to its subtle whispers, powerfully reminds us that true, lasting power and genuine, life-affirming sustenance are found not in acts of domination or relentless extraction, but in cultivating a deeply respectful, symbiotic relationship with the living planet. This ancient wisdom, carried on the winds of time, consistently whispered that their true memory is indeed etched into the very fabric of the soil, carried in the sacred smoke of timeless ritual, held within the miraculous generative power of the humble seed, and crucially can be reawakened within the illuminated consciousness residing within each and every one of us.